We often assume that good user experience design, characterized by usability, clarity, and frictionless interactions, always leads to positive outcomes for users. However, this assumption can be misleading. When UX is optimized primarily for engagement, convenience, and efficiency, it can inadvertently cause harm. This paradox forms the foundation of our exploration: how well-intentioned design principles can have unintended negative consequences. Throughout this video, we'll examine the various ways that seemingly beneficial UX elements can contribute to overuse, manipulation, and long-term harm, challenging designers to consider the broader ethical implications of their work. UX harm occurs when design choices intended to improve user experience negatively impact user well-being, autonomy, or societal good. It's about considering the broader, long-term consequences of design decisions beyond immediate usability. To understand UX harm comprehensively, let's examine its key aspects. Persuasive design uses behavioral psychology to drive actions for business goals, while ethical UX balances this with autonomy, transparency, and harm prevention. Another aspect is overuse and addiction loops, where features create compulsion cycles via intermittent rewards, leading to addictive behaviors that erode user well-being over time. UX harm also involves manipulation and autonomy reduction, where design exploits cognitive biases, reducing informed choice and user agency in decision-making processes. Metrics conflict arises when engagement and retention KPIs often clash with well-being, prioritizing short-term profits over long-term user health. Finally, temporal harm accumulates through repeated interactions, emerging as delayed effects like eroded attention spans or mental health issues. And addiction loops represent the dark side of engagement-focused UX design. Features designed to maximize user time on platforms, such as infinite scroll and autoplay, create compulsion cycles through intermittent rewards. These rewards, much like slot machines, provide unpredictable positive reinforcement that triggers dopamine release, fostering addictive behaviors. Users find themselves scrolling endlessly or watching videos passively, neglecting work, relationships, and self-care. This ties directly to behavioral psychology, where the anticipation of rewards creates powerful habit loops. Over time, what starts as convenient engagement evolves into problematic overuse, with studies showing correlations to increased anxiety and reduced life satisfaction. The cycle continues as platforms optimize for retention metrics, often at the expense of user well-being. Infinite scroll represents one of the most insidious examples of how good UX can cause harm. This feature, prominently used on platforms like TikTok and Instagram, creates a continuous stream of content without any clear endpoint. As users scroll down, more content automatically loads, eliminating the natural stopping points that once existed in paginated interfaces. This design choice, intended to increase engagement and time spent on the platform, fundamentally alters user behavior by removing decision points where individuals might choose to stop. Psychologically, infinite scroll exploits our innate curiosity and the human tendency toward completion-seeking behaviors. Without a visible end to the content stream, users experience a constant state of anticipation. What might be next? This creates compulsion cycles where each scroll promises new discovery, making it difficult to disengage. The feature transforms casual browsing into extended sessions, often extending beyond the user's original intent. The harmful effects become particularly evident in research findings. A comprehensive 2024 Harvard University study examined the impact of infinite scroll on over 1,000 regular social media users. The researchers found that participants exposed to infinite scroll interfaces experienced a 30% increase in anxiety symptoms over a 6-month period. This wasn't an immediate effect, but accumulated gradually through repeated exposure, demonstrating how seemingly benign design choices can lead to significant long-term psychological consequences. To understand the broader context, let's examine recent mental health trends. The graph shows anxiety disorder symptoms in the United States from 2020 to 2022, with peaks during the pandemic period and gradual declines. The table illustrates mental health challenges by age group in 2022, revealing higher rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness among younger adults aged 18 to 29. These data points suggest that while infinite scroll may contribute to individual anxiety increases, it operates within a larger ecosystem of digital experiences that collectively impact mental well-being. In essence, infinite scroll transforms the fundamental act of content consumption from a deliberate choice into an involuntary process. Users no longer control when their browsing session ends. Instead, the platform dictates the pace and duration. This shift represents a profound erosion of user autonomy, where the design prioritizes platform metrics over individual well-being. The 30% anxiety increase documented in the Harvard study serves as a quantitative reminder that even features praised for their usability can have hidden costs when deployed without consideration for long-term human impact. Autoplay videos represent a seemingly beneficial feature that enhances user convenience by automatically queuing and playing content. However, this design choice creates significant challenges for digital well-being. By defaulting to continuous playback on platforms like YouTube, autoplay maximizes watch time metrics that drive platform revenue through advertising. Yet this convenience comes at a cost, as it fosters passive consumption patterns where users disengage from active decision-making in their media intake. This passive consumption leads to information overload, where the brain struggles to process the continuous influx of videos, news, and content. Users may find themselves scrolling through hours of material without retaining meaningful information, contributing to cognitive fatigue and reduced attention spans. The design exploits psychological tendencies toward effortless engagement, but at the expense of mindful media consumption. Moreover, autoplay exacerbates the spread of misinformation by presenting content in a seamless flow that bypasses critical evaluation. Users may encounter and share inaccurate or harmful information without pausing to verify its credibility. The Federal Trade Commission's investigations have highlighted how autoplay mechanisms contribute to this problem, revealing patterns of misinformation amplification through algorithmic recommendations and uninterrupted viewing experiences. In essence, while autoplay boosts engagement metrics and platform profitability, it undermines user autonomy by removing the friction of active choice. This design pattern illustrates the broader tension between optimizing for business outcomes and prioritizing user well-being in digital interfaces. Ethical considerations demand reevaluating such features to balance convenience with responsible consumption. Cognitive biases are systematic patterns of deviation from rational judgment. In user experience design, these psychological tendencies can be deliberately exploited to manipulate user behavior, significantly reducing their autonomy and ability to make informed choices. The Cognitive Bias Codex illustrates various biases that designers can leverage. One particularly powerful bias is loss aversion, which describes our tendency to prefer avoiding losses over acquiring equivalent gains. This is often twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something. In UX, loss aversion is exploited through design elements that create perceived losses. Features like streaks or progress bars make users fear losing their accumulated effort, compelling them to continue engagement even when it might not be in their best interest. A prime example is gamified streaks in apps like language learning platforms. These create a psychological commitment where users feel compelled to maintain their daily streak to avoid the loss of their progress. This reduces autonomy by making users prioritize the app's goals over their own well-being. Research shows that 70% of users feel manipulated by such features, and 45% regret the decisions they make under this influence. This exploitation of cognitive biases undermines user autonomy, turning what appears to be good UX into a tool for manipulation that serves business interests over user well-being. Persuasive notifications represent a powerful tool in user experience design, where apps send targeted alerts to create a sense of urgency and compel users to return. These notifications often exploit psychological principles to manipulate behavior, prioritizing engagement over user well-being. A prime example is the mobile game Candy Crush, which employs persuasive notifications tied to gamification elements like streaks. These alerts remind players to maintain daily progress, creating pressure to continue playing even when they might prefer to stop. By using rewards and potential loss of progress, the app fosters compulsive behavior. Research underscores the harm. A 2023 study by King's College London, conducted on 500 teenagers, found that notification driven gameplay in similar apps resulted in 25% higher impulsivity scores. This correlation extended to reduced academic performance, highlighting how these features can interfere with real world responsibilities and long term well being. Ultimately, persuasive notifications reduce user autonomy by leveraging cognitive biases such as fear of missing out or loss aversion. This can contribute to broader issues like overuse and addiction, where users feel trapped in cycles of compulsive engagement rather than making conscious choices. Gamified streaks are a common UX technique where users earn rewards for consecutive actions, like logging in daily. Apps like Duolingo use this to encourage language learning habits, rewarding users with badges or virtual points for maintaining streaks. This builds positive reinforcement, making users feel accomplished and motivated to continue. However, this gamification creates a psychological trap. When a streak is broken, users experience significant emotional distress due to loss aversion, the tendency to feel losses more intensely than gains. Behavioral economics shows this curve is steeper for losses, meaning the pain of losing a 7-day streak outweighs the pleasure of maintaining it. This fear of breaking the streak can lead to compulsive behavior, where users log in even when they don't want to, just to avoid the emotional cost. The consequences extend beyond just missing a reward. User surveys reveal that 40% of people experience significant anxiety when their streaks are broken, feeling guilty about what they perceive as personal failure. This emotional manipulation exploits our natural aversion to loss, turning what should be a helpful habit-building tool into a source of stress and self-doubt. Apps that rely on streaks create a constant pressure to perform, even when life circumstances make it difficult, leading to feelings of inadequacy and reduced self-esteem over time. Purchases, exemplified by Amazon's one-click purchase feature, streamline the buying process by pre-storing payment and shipping details, requiring just a single click to complete a transaction. This design prioritizes user convenience, making shopping quick and effortless. However, by removing friction and minimizing the time for reflection, it can trigger impulse buying, exploiting psychological tendencies toward instant gratification and bypassing rational deliberation. A comprehensive 2025 Consumer Reports analysis revealed that one-click purchases contribute to $50 billion in annual regret purchases each year. This phenomenon leads to broader issues like financial strain from overspending, heightened consumerism, and significant debt impacts, especially among younger users who may have less developed impulse control mechanisms. In the world of digital design, platforms rely heavily on key performance indicators, or KPIs, to measure success. Engagement, measured by time spent on the platform, and retention, tracked through return rates, are among the most critical metrics. These KPIs drive business decisions, as longer user sessions and frequent returns indicate higher value. However, this focus on engagement and retention often creates a fundamental conflict with user well-being. Features designed to maximize these metrics, such as infinite scroll or autoplay, can trap users in cycles of overuse, leading to increased anxiety, disrupted sleep patterns, and diminished social interactions. According to a 2025 OECD report, persuasive UX practices contribute to $1 trillion in annual global productivity losses from digital overuse. Ethical UX seeks to balance this by incorporating alternative metrics, such as digital health scores that track stress levels and overall well-being through app data. The sooner retention curves flatten, indicating users achieving sustainable habits, the better for long-term user health. Temporal harm refers to the way user experience design can cause damage that accumulates over time rather than manifesting immediately. While individual interactions with apps or websites might seem benign, the cumulative effect of repeated exposure to certain features can lead to significant negative impacts on mental health and well-being. For instance, features like infinite scroll create endless content streams that, over months of daily use, have been shown to increase anxiety levels by up to 30%, according to recent Harvard studies. Similarly, autoplay mechanisms encourage passive consumption, gradually exposing users to misinformation and reducing critical thinking skills over time. Persuasive notifications, designed to maximize engagement, can foster impulsivity, with research showing correlations to 25% higher impulsivity scores among frequent users. Even gamified elements like streaks build guilt and fear of loss through daily reinforcement, while one-click purchases enable impulse buying that accumulates into financial regret. These harms are temporal because they emerge from the compounding effects of small, seemingly positive design choices repeated over extended periods. Statistics reveal that 13% of adults now meet criteria for social media use disorder, up from 8% just a few years ago, illustrating how these accumulative effects have escalated into a widespread public health concern. The key insight is that UX designers must consider not just immediate usability, but the long-term trajectory of how their choices compound over time. AI-driven UX relies on sophisticated algorithms that personalize user experiences, but this personalization can amplify harm in unexpected ways. These algorithms analyze user data to predict preferences and behaviors, creating tailored content streams that isolate users within echo chambers known as filter bubbles. Filter bubbles occur when algorithms prioritize content that matches existing user interests, reinforcing biases and potentially exposing users to harmful information without balance. This isolation can deepen polarization and limit exposure to diverse perspectives. Additionally, these algorithms enable hyper-targeted advertising, where manipulative ads are directed at vulnerable individuals based on their data profiles. This exploitation of cognitive biases, such as scarcity or social proof, can lead to impulse actions with negative consequences like financial harm or addictive behaviors. Content moderation systems, often powered by AI, struggle with biases in their training data, leading to inconsistent filtering of harmful content. This can result in false positives or negatives, as seen in confusion matrices for detecting sexually explicit or violent material, further amplifying the risks of algorithmic harm. Overall, while algorithms enhance user experiences, their unchecked amplification of harmful patterns underscores the need for ethical design and rigorous oversight to mitigate these risks. Ethical UX represents a fundamental responsibility for designers to consider long-term effects on users and society. It's not just about creating frictionless experiences, but ensuring those experiences don't cause harm over time. This responsibility requires examining the long-term consequences of design choices. Features that seem beneficial in the short term, like infinite scroll or autoplay, can lead to overuse and addiction when viewed over months or years. Ethical UX must address power asymmetries between designers and users. Often, those creating the interfaces are privileged and don't experience the same harms they impose on vulnerable populations, such as low-income users or marginalized communities. A critical question in ethical UX is who benefits from the design. Is it truly the user, or is it the platform maximizing engagement and profits? Designers must evaluate whether their good UX serves individual well-being or corporate interests. Ultimately, ethical UX requires a paradigm shift from focusing solely on user satisfaction metrics to prioritizing broader societal good. This means designing with empathy, transparency, and accountability, ensuring that usability and engagement don't come at the cost of human dignity and well-being. Asymmetries in UX design reveal a fundamental imbalance where the benefits of design decisions disproportionately favor companies and designers over users. In the tech industry, particularly in Silicon Valley, UX practitioners often operate within insulated environments that shield them from the real-world consequences of their creations. While users may experience addiction, mental health challenges, or reduced autonomy, designers and their employers gain profits, data collection, and market dominance. This disconnect raises critical ethical questions about who truly benefits from UX design and whether current practices prioritize corporate interests over user well-being. Regulatory responses are emerging as a critical mechanism for holding platforms accountable for the harms caused by well-intentioned UX design. In the European Union, the Digital Services Act, fully enforceable since 2024, requires major platforms to conduct thorough risk assessments, specifically targeting addictive features. Noncompliance can result in substantial fines up to 6% of a company's global revenue. This legislation reflects growing recognition of the societal costs of unchecked digital engagement. Across the Atlantic, the United States Federal Trade Commission has intensified its investigations into manipulative user experience practices. In 2025, the FTC secured settlements against applications employing deceptive notifications, including a significant $500 million fine levied on a prominent social media platform for amplifying misinformation through autoplay features. These actions signal a shift toward greater accountability, emphasizing the need to balance innovation with user protection. Industry responses to UX harm include the adoption of well-being audits and ethical design frameworks by major tech companies. Well-being audits are systematic evaluations of product features to identify potential negative impacts on user mental health and behavior. These audits often involve checklists that assess elements like notification patterns, addictive loops, and engagement metrics, similar to the professional audit checklist shown here. Companies like Google and Meta have announced frameworks for conducting these reviews, aiming to integrate ethical considerations into their design processes. Ethical design frameworks provide structured guidelines for balancing user experience with broader societal implications. These frameworks often include principles like user autonomy, transparency, and harm minimization, as illustrated in this presentation slide showing framework examples. They help designers evaluate trade-offs between engagement and well-being, incorporating metrics beyond traditional KPIs like session time. However, these industry responses have significant limitations. Most well-being audits and ethical frameworks are voluntary initiatives, lacking mandatory enforcement or independent verification. This can lead to inconsistent application, where companies may prioritize business objectives over comprehensive harm prevention. Additionally, these approaches often focus on mitigating symptoms rather than addressing fundamental issues, such as algorithmic amplification of harmful content or the inherent conflicts between profit motives and user welfare. Without regulatory pressure, many tech companies may view these efforts as superficial compliance rather than genuine transformation. Leading experts in human-computer interaction have long warned that user experience design, while intended to create seamless and intuitive interfaces, can inadvertently or intentionally foster addictive behaviors. Tristan Harris, co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology, has been particularly vocal about this issue. He argues that much of modern UX is deliberately engineered for addiction, using psychological principles to keep users engaged at the expense of their well-being. Harris describes frictionless design, the removal of barriers to make actions effortless, as a Trojan horse for harm, allowing manipulative features to infiltrate users' lives without their awareness. Harris's organization, the Center for Humane Technology, has documented how platforms exploit cognitive biases and behavioral science to create compulsion loops. In interviews from 2025, he highlighted that 68% of app users report feeling addicted, according to a Pew Research Center survey from 2024. This addiction by design approach prioritizes short-term engagement metrics over long-term user health, creating a system where well-meaning UX principles serve corporate interests rather than human flourishing. Other prominent voices echo these concerns. Nir Eyal, author of the book Hooked on habit-forming technology, has updated his framework to advocate for ethical hooks that promote positive behaviors. He warns that traditional engagement metrics, which measure time spent and retention rates, often blind designers to the well-being impacts of their creations. Eyal points out correlations between gamified apps and higher depression rates among users under 25, as reported in a 2025 American Psychological Association study. HCI professor Daniela Rosner, in her 2024 CHI conference keynote, emphasized the power asymmetries inherent in UX design. She noted that designers, often based in privileged tech hubs like Silicon Valley, rarely experience the harms their creations inflict on broader society. This disconnect allows for the perpetuation of manipulative practices that disproportionately affect marginalized groups, such as low-income users targeted by predatory financial apps. Rosner's critique underscores the need for designers to question not just what works, but who benefits from their design decisions. Supporting these expert opinions are stark statistics. A 2024 JAMA study found that 13% of adults now meet criteria for social media use disorder, up from just 8% in 2019. Collectively, these voices from Harris, Isle, and Rosner reveal a critical truth. Much of modern UX is engineered for addiction, with frictionless design serving as a subtle but powerful mechanism for harm. They call for a fundamental shift toward ethical design that prioritizes human autonomy and well-being over manipulative engagement. The future of UX design is increasingly focused on well-being-centered approaches, shifting away from addictive engagement towards designs that support mental health and balanced technology use. Key trends include digital detox features that encourage users to disconnect and recharge, reducing the constant pull of notifications and endless scrolling. Mindfulness apps are being redesigned with user interfaces that prioritize calm and reflection, using serene visuals, gentle animations, and features that guide users towards present moment awareness rather than compulsive interaction. Gamification is being reimagined to promote well-being, using positive reinforcement techniques that reward healthy behaviors like completing meditation sessions or achieving digital detox goals, fostering sustainable habits instead of addictive loops. These trends represent a fundamental shift in UX philosophy, from optimizing for engagement to designing for human flourishing, with the potential to create technology that enhances rather than diminishes our well-being. The Digital Wellness Act represents a significant legislative push in the United States to address the harms caused by poor user experience design. Proposed as a draft in 2026, this bill aims to mandate transparency in how tech companies design their platforms, specifically requiring them to disclose their design intentions and the potential impacts on user well-being. This marks a critical shift from voluntary ethical guidelines to enforceable accountability measures. At its core, the Digital Wellness Act would require tech companies to provide clear, accessible information about how their design choices, such as infinite scroll or persuasive notifications, are intended to influence user behavior. This transparency would help users make informed decisions and hold companies responsible for features that contribute to overuse, addiction, or mental health issues. By mandating such disclosures, the Act targets the root causes of UX harm identified in research, including manipulation and reduced autonomy. This legislation emerges in response to growing evidence of UX harms, including correlations between app engagement and rising anxiety rates, as highlighted in recent WHO reports and FTC investigations. It addresses power asymmetries, where tech giants prioritize profits over user well-being, forcing a reevaluation of metrics like engagement that often conflict with mental health. The Act signals a broader regulatory trend, building on the EU's Digital Services Act, and aims to create incentives for ethical design while imposing penalties for non-compliance. While promising, implementation faces challenges such as defining design intent clearly, enforcing global compliance, and balancing innovation with regulation. Nevertheless, the Digital Wellness Act could lead to reduced instances of compulsive behaviors, better informed users, and a cultural shift in the tech industry towards prioritizing societal benefits over short-term gains. This legislative push underscores the need for proactive measures to mitigate the unintended consequences of well-intentioned UX design. Key statistics reveal the alarming scale of UX harm. A 2024 JAMA study found that 13% of adults now meet the criteria for social media use disorder, a significant increase from 8% in 2019. This highlights how addictive design has become a widespread issue affecting mental health on a massive scale. The OECD's 2025 report estimates that persuasive UX costs global economies a staggering $1 trillion annually in productivity losses due to overuse. This figure underscores the economic toll of design choices that prioritize engagement over well-being, impacting workforce efficiency worldwide. A 2024 Pew survey shows that 68% of app users report feeling addicted to digital platforms. This widespread sense of dependency indicates how pervasive manipulative design has become in everyday technology use. According to a 2025 APA study, gamified apps correlate with 15% higher depression rates among users under 25. This statistic reveals the disproportionate impact on younger demographics, where engagement features can exacerbate mental health vulnerabilities. A 2023 EU survey found that 70% of users feel manipulated by one-click features, with 45% regretting their decisions afterward. This data illustrates how frictionless design can undermine user autonomy and lead to costly mistakes. Longitudinal data from the 2024 Apple Heart Study links increased notifications to a 22% rise in sleep disturbances over 2 years. This demonstrates the cumulative, long-term physical health impacts of persistent UX interventions. Finally, a 2025 Gallup poll indicates that 62% of Americans believe social media UX harms mental health more than it helps. This public perception reflects growing awareness of the societal costs of well-intentioned design gone wrong. Designers have traditionally focused on creating products that are usable and engaging, prioritizing metrics like user satisfaction and business goals. However, this approach often overlooks potential harms that can emerge from well-intentioned design decisions. The required shift in mindset demands that designers consider not just immediate usability, but also the potential for long-term harm. This involves moving beyond surface-level engagement to a deeper examination of psychological, ethical, and societal implications. Understanding psychology is crucial for this mindset shift. Designers must grasp how cognitive biases and behavioral patterns influence user interactions, recognizing that features designed for engagement can inadvertently create addictive loops or manipulate decision-making processes. Ethical considerations form the foundation of responsible design. Designers must weigh moral responsibilities, balancing potential benefits against foreseeable harms, and considering how design decisions impact different user groups and stakeholders in society. Finally, designers must evaluate societal impact, considering how their work affects communities, public health, and social structures over time. This includes examining power imbalances and ensuring design serves broader human needs rather than narrow business objectives. This shift in mindset requires integrating these considerations into the design process itself. By adopting frameworks that prioritize human well-being alongside functionality, designers can create products that truly serve users and society, rather than potentially causing unintended harm. Moving forward requires a proactive commitment to ethical UX practices. By implementing comprehensive design audits, we can systematically evaluate potential harms in our interfaces before they reach users. These audits should include ethical reviews that assess alignment with principles of autonomy and transparency, drawing from established frameworks like those being developed by Google and Meta in 2026. Equally crucial is considering long-term effects on user well-being. Traditional metrics like engagement and retention must be balanced against outcomes such as increased anxiety, reduced productivity, and broader societal impacts. Digital health scores and longitudinal studies to understand how repeated interactions accumulate harm over time, ensuring designs promote sustainable well-being rather than short-term addiction. Finally, empowering users with greater control over their digital experiences is essential for ethical UX. This means incorporating features that enhance autonomy, such as clear opt-out mechanisms, transparent explanations of algorithmic decisions, and tools like Instagram's quiet mode. By prioritizing user agency and informed consent, designers can mitigate manipulation and foster trust, ultimately creating interfaces that serve human needs rather than exploiting them. In conclusion, good UX design must transcend mere usability and engagement to actively contribute to a better future for humanity. Rather than exploiting psychological vulnerabilities through addictive loops and manipulative features, ethical UX prioritizes long-term well-being, autonomy, and societal benefit. By embracing responsible design principles, we can create digital experiences that enrich lives without causing harm. This means balancing persuasive techniques with transparency, incorporating well-being metrics alongside engagement KPIs, and considering the broader impacts on mental health, productivity, and social connections. As we've seen throughout this exploration, features like infinite scroll, autoplay, and gamified notifications, while initially designed for user satisfaction, can lead to overuse, addiction, and reduced autonomy when not tempered by ethical considerations. Moving forward, designers have a responsibility to conduct harm assessments, implement well being audits, and advocate for regulatory frameworks that hold platforms accountable. This shift requires a fundamental mindset change, from optimizing for short term profits to designing for sustainable human flourishing. Ultimately, when UX serves both individual engagement and collective good, technology becomes a force for positive change rather than exploitation.